Today we'll be cleaning the carburetor on a 1982 Yamaha YZ490. We've got the carburetor here already off the motorcycle. So if we've got it pulled off the motorcycle, if you have it in your hands already, you already know how to take the throttle cable off. We'll kind of walk through that. Here's the cap, and it's got a spring behind it, so be careful when you pull that off. There's a spring, there's an O-ring, a gasket inside here. Want to inspect that, make sure that's in good condition. There's a spring there, and then we've got your slide. Now the way that the throttle cable works coming down into there's a clip right here, and if you've got that carburetor off, you just tip that slide off there, and then you're able to push that throttle cable down and through a round hole right there. So this clip, just want to make sure that you put it back on there when it's time to go back together, and that holds that throttle cable in place there. This is your needle here, and this is a lot of times adjustable depending on altitude, temperature, riding conditions, stuff like that. A lot of times you can do all that by changing jets instead, but for extreme conditions you can occasionally adjust that needle. Next we've got the choke assembly here, just a pull knob, and it should move freely. There's a plunger inside of there. It takes a 12mm wrench, and you just put your wrench on there and loosen it up, and then turn that whole piece there, and you can just spin it off. And this is brass going into aluminum, but there's your choke there, there's your plunger. You want to make sure that it moves freely up and down, make sure there's no debris down in there. You can spray carbon choke cleaner in there, clean that out really good. We'll leave that out for now. Next we'll pull your bowl off, and before we do that, we've got a 17mm cap on the bottom here. If you're draining it for the year or have some bad gas in there, that's an option. You can pull that cap, let the fuel and debris flow out the bottom. Now if you've sucked debris up into those jets, pulling that cap probably isn't going to fix your problem. So if your motorcycle sat through the winter, it's just not running quite right, pulling that cap isn't going to help. But if you're draining it before winter, you can pull that cap and the fuel will flow out the bottom there, and so there's no fuel left in that carburetor. We've got 4 Phillips screws here on the bottom of this bowl, and then a lot of times this cap will stick because of the gasket. You can just tap it, it'll break it free. Here's your overflow tube right here, and that comes out this bottom nipple. And so if your float sticks and is allowing fuel to fill up inside here, and instead of that fuel going through the ports down into the cylinder, that the intentions of this piece here is for that fuel to drain through there and out the bottom. So you want to make sure you've got a hose on the bottom there so it's not flowing directly onto the motor if it does overflow. If you're hitting jumps, stuff like that, fuel will also come out there. That's why you want to make sure that hose is on there. You don't want that fuel sitting on that hot motor. Next, to pull your pilot jet, we've got a flat screwdriver here. You want to make sure, well, we'll pull your main jet first. We've got your main jet on the top here, and we've got a 6mm wrench. And that we pull that main jet, and we've got all that came apart here. There's several different pieces. Here's your main jet holder is down here. Here's a little spacer, and then here's your main jet. You want to make sure that you can see through there. Hold it up to light, make sure you can see through it. If you can't, clean it out. You can use carbon choke cleaner or compressed air to blow through there. Make sure that cap goes on this way. So your main jet sits on top of that cap. You don't want that main jet sitting inside of there. Okay, you can blow through this with compressed air. Make sure that that's all clean there. We'll leave that out. And then we've got your float here. Your float is held in by this pin here, and we can pull that float. And this is a brass float here. Newer stuff, they're plastic. Now for this, we've got your needle and seat here, and you can pull this. There's a little clip on there. You can pull that clip off and pull that needle out. And we'll do that quick just so you can see how that's done there. Use a screwdriver or a small set of needle nose pliers or something, pull that clip out, and that holds that needle from falling out. Now that needle will be allowed to fall out. There's your needle there. If it's grooved, if it's damaged, a lot of times there'll be debris that gets stuck down in there. You know, clean that out with compressed air, blow it out. If it's grooved at all, you want to replace it. If down in there that seat is worn really badly, you'll want to replace it, and you can just pull that out. It's a 10 millimeter. Just unscrew it there. We'll set that needle back down in there. We'll put the clip back on. All right, we've got that clip just about set back down on there. Okay, now that needle will not fall out the way that it sits now. Now we'll pull the pilot jet. We'll just leave that on. We'll pull that pilot jet. It's a small flat screwdriver. Make sure, and it's clear down in this port here. You want to make sure that flat screwdriver is set down into that groove very, very well before you start turning it. That way you don't round that pilot screw off of there, pilot jet off. Otherwise you won't be able to get it out without drilling it out. So you just take it, unscrew it, and drop that pilot jet out. This is a very small port. You want to blow through it with compressed air. Make sure you can see through it. It'll be a little bit harder to see through because it's so small. You want to make sure you can see through it. Put the pilot jet back in, screw it in, and you're going into your brass going into aluminum, so it doesn't have to be very tight. You want to make sure that that's seated really good before you turn on there again. We'll go ahead and put that main jet back on there. Again, 6 millimeter wrench. Turn it on there. Now we've got your float and your pin. A lot of times these pins get stuck, and you can use a pick, but you want to make sure you don't damage these posts here. If these posts are damaged at all, that carburetor is destroyed. So we've got that. Put that pin in there. Make sure that moves freely up and down. And then we'll put your bowl back together here. Or back on. 4 Phillips screws. And again, you don't have to tighten these down very hard. You want to make sure that they're seated really good. And then just snug is all you'll need here. All right, and then we will turn it on its side here. I'll show you a couple more things. We've got your idle adjust on the side here. And they've made it to where you can just turn it by hand. So essentially what that is doing is just raising that slide. That slide sets down in there like this, and it's touching that groove there. It's just pushing that slide up a little bit more. When you put that slide back in, it'll only go in one way all the way down. So if you turn that idle adjust, you see you're just raising and lowering that slide there. And that is it for the carburetor on the YZ490. We're putting that choke back together. We'll put that cap back on, but there's no need to put that cap back on until we have the throttle cable back in there. But just to have it all together, we'll put that cap back on. Those threads are very small threads on this aluminum cap, so you want to make sure you don't damage those going back together. Make sure you can put it on there nice and snug.